Hello people, I hope you're having a good weekend so we all get to have some time to relax. I thought I'd give you a little description about my channel and everything. So you know I'm called World War III Gaming. Now the real reason why I actually wanted to start this channel with that name is because one of my favorite types of genre is World War III. Now here's one disclaimer, I do not want World War III to happen in real life. I do love the idea of a conventional World War III conflict in fiction. I always play those kinds of games, I mean there are a ton of them actually, and I also watch those kinds of movies. So in case you didn't know, here are the top 10 movies with a conventional World War III, either because it never escalated to nuclear conflict, either because there's a limited nuclear exchange, or missile defenses take out all the nukes. So here we go. Number 10, we have The Sum of All Fears. The Sum of All Fears stars Ben Affleck and Morgan Freeman and focuses on the early 21st century where new sets of tensions are rising between the West and the Russian Federation. Meanwhile, a certain neo-Nazi wants to ignite a war between the two, and after smuggling a stolen Israeli tactical nuke, he detonates it in Maryland. Puzzled, the Americans think it's the Russians and immediately go to DEFCON 1, while also in a sad stream of events, a rogue Russian general orders aircraft to attack a US aircraft carrier in the North Sea in Europe, and then the US military retaliates by launching airstrikes on Russian air bases with F-16s. Things start to heat up, but then Jack Ryan, the protagonist of the movie, played by Ben Affleck, manages to calm everyone down and things come to a good end. Number 9 is High Flight. You probably haven't heard of this, but this is a 1957 movie about the Cold War, which features John Gilling and stars a bunch of RAF pilots who are stationed in West Germany. Well, one day while on a flying training routine, they move close to the East German border and are fired at by communist anti-aircraft fire. Fortunately, all of them make it, and the issue is resolved diplomatically. Number 8 is Hell and High Water. This is also a movie you might not know, but it's actually pretty good. It was released in 1954 and stars Samuel Fuller. It is about a US submarine that is stationed near Japan and South Korea, and it uncovers a plot where the Chinese government is trying to develop atomic weapons and use them against Japan and South Korea. That is where the submarine must fight the Chinese and must stop them from developing that nuke. Eventually they succeed, and because the Chinese are doing a top secret experiment and they don't want it to get out of hand, they just try to cover everything up rather than engage in a nuclear war. Although they didn't have nukes yet. Number 7, The Show Must Go On. This is also a movie you might not know, but this is a 2010 Croatian movie which features a family and a rich entrepreneur of some Big Brother-like show trying to keep his contestants safe while a World War III is going on. There isn't much combat. I mean, you do have a few airstrikes and air battles all over Croatia and the capital known as Zagreb, but it does give the overall feeling of a war going on. If you look closer, you might even see combat in some news footage. The war does escalate into nuclear conflict, and Zagreb is unfortunately destroyed. However, it is hinted that other countries survived because there are missile defenses active. Number 6 is Deterrence. Now this is a pretty old movie from 2000. It's a French-American movie where the US president is stranded in a diner while a war breaks out in the Middle East and East Asia against Iraq, which is now a superpower and has nuclear weapons. You do get to see combat footage in the news footage that they place in the movie. However, most of it is psychological and revolves around the president trying to determine what to do in the event of a nuclear attack. Eventually, he does launch a nuclear bomb on Baghdad, the capital of Iraq, and Iraq does launch nuclear weapons towards Europe and the US. Fortunately, the vast majority of nukes are intercepted by missile defenses, and those few that do land fail to detonate. They just simply fail to detonate. Number 5, Olympus Has Fallen. Now, this is kind of a stretch when calling it a World War III movie, but hey, it is something like that. It features rogue North Korean terrorists, I mean, probably ones working for the government, since later on in the movie Kim Jong-un is ready to declare war on South Korea. But in general, a bunch of North Korean terrorists, they managed to take over the White House and take the president hostage, who is played by Aaron Eckhart. There is some exchange of fire between the American and terrorist forces, such as the F-22 downing the rogue AC-130 Spectre gunship, and you have the Navy SEALs when they move up to the White House in an attempt to retake it. However, most of the fighting is done by the protagonist, Gerard Butler, who then manages to defeat the majority of the terrorists and saves the president. Number 4, Tomorrow When the War Began. This is a 2010 Australian movie which features a group of teenagers. One of them is played by Caitlin Stacey, in fact she's the protagonist, and they're on a little camping trip out in the wilderness. When they come back, they find that their hometown has been occupied by a coalition of Asian nations. They form a resistance and then they begin fighting the enemies. There even is one part of the movie where we see a dogfight between an Australian F-18 and what appear to be Chinese J-10s. And the movie ends on a cliffhanger as they say liberate their town. Number 3, World War III Inside the War Room. This is a 2015 British docudrama made by the BBC. It features a bunch of politicians who are determining how they shall react, and there is plenty of combat. It is a case very similar to Ukraine, where Russia invades Latvia, only Latvia is a NATO country, and the politicians do their thing in the war room, hence the title. It shows a lot of combat footage, and there is plenty of conventional warfare. The highest that ever comes is that there is an exchange between just 2 tactical nuclear missiles, but both sides back down before it can get any worse. Number 2, although this is better to be said 2 and 2.5, we have Red Dawn. The original Red Dawn features a Cold War situation where the Soviet Union and an alliance of Latin American nations invade the United States and occupy Colorado. There is some limited exchange of nuclear fire, but both sides decide to stand down. The fighting does continue conventionally, and there is fighting between US and Russian forces in the movie. We see helicopters shooting down Russians everywhere, we see an air battle, we see a colonel that was downed, and we also see an Abrams tank that took part in a fight against T-72s. But the movie mainly focuses on a group of resistance fighters, among them who are starred by Patrick Swayze and Charlie Sheen, and they must battle everything from the wilderness to themselves to the Warsaw Pact nations. A remake was made in 2012. The film stars Chris Hemsworth and Josh Peck and features a group of teenage resistance fighters who are trying to save their hometown from an invasion of Russian and North Korean troops. The film actually does show US forces fighting. I mean, at the beginning you see F-16 shoot down North Korean planes, and then eventually the teens stumble across a couple of US Marines who help them achieve their objective. Now, this movie did fall under some criticism, but hey, I don't care what any of you tell me. I love this movie. This was much better than the original. Red Dawn is really, really good. Now, before we reach number 1, here are some honorable mentions. You have The Titan, which is coming out on March 30th. It's going to show a sort of World War III situation in a case where humans are fighting for the last remaining resources on the Earth, and it will feature Sam Worthington. You have Okkupert, or the Norwegian name for Occupied, which is a TV show between 2015 and 2017, which shows a divided West and Russia invading Norway. You also have a 2006 film called Children of Men. Well, this sort of takes on a World War III scenario in the case where people lose their fertility and they start killing each other all over the planet, with the United Kingdom being the only remaining functioning nation in the world. And at number 1, we have the 1982 Japanese anime film Future War 1980X. This movie was made right in the heap of the Cold War, and it features a couple of characters. The main one is a scientist who helped develop a kind of missile defense very similar to Ronald Reagan's Star Wars system. After a coup in the Soviet Union, they begin attacking the West and its allies. The first battleground is in Europe, with the Warsaw Pact marching over the Fulda Gap and attacking West Germany. However, it also spreads, as you have airstrikes all over the United States and Japan, which are all US allies. China eventually joins the war. You have the Soviet Union invading the Middle East, and you have the United States invading Cuba. The situation does escalate into nuclear confrontation, and a few nuclear bombs are launched on each other. However, nuclear apocalypse is averted as the missile defenses eventually destroy all the ICBMs coming, and the moderate government instigates another coup which removes the extreme one from power. This is one of my favorite movies, and it's really good. I recommend checking it out. So these are some really good movies that do show a sort of World War III situation that doesn't end in nuclear apocalypse. If anyone else knows any kind of movie very similar, please let me know in the comments below and let me know what you think.